that button there.
Good morning, everyone. Can I welcome you all to the Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Partnership, and to welcome you to this splendid venue, the Blackburn Town Hall, and thank you to our colleagues in Blackburn with Darwin for making this facility available to us. It's really nice to be here. Can I remind all colleagues that this morning's meeting is being webcast, so please use the microphones whenever possible and indicate to speak in the normal way. Can I just begin by giving apologies, which are as follows. So we've received apologies from Councillor Neil Brooks, Peter Murphy, Naz Zaman, Louise Taylor, Dr David Fernley, Victoria Gent, Councillor Patricia Bell, Councillor Alistair Bradley, Sue McGraw and Jane Scattergood. But there are some replacements. So Councillor Jonathan Brooke is attending on behalf of Councillor Bell. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar is attending in place of Councillor Bradley. Howard Booth is attending on behalf of Sue McGraw, and Vicky Ellaby is attending on behalf of Jane Scattergood. So you're all welcome. Can I also welcome new members to this partnership that have never attended previously. I hope you find it worthwhile and look forward to working with you in the months and years to come. Kevin Lavery will be attending this morning, but as advised, he may be a little late as he's travelling from another meeting, which he had to be at, but we look forward to seeing Kevin later. Josh, are there any health and safety announcements, please?
Just that we're not expecting a fire alarm. If there are, as usual, follow the green signs. As far as facilities go, the ladies is down the corridor on the right, and the gents is down the corridor through the double doors to the right, and keep going, and it's on your right again. And just a word of advice, we only have a few microphones, so we might have to share them between us, but it is a simple technology, even for the likes of me. There is a button that looks like someone speaking. It's the right-hand button. If you press that, it will show up red, and that means your microphone is on for you to speak, and then press it again and it turns off. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh, that's helpful. And we're now going to test the microphone system, as I'm going to go around the room and ask members to introduce themselves, given that we have some new members and people may be watching the meeting online. So if I can start by asking my deputy, Angela, and I'll pass the microphone to you.
Thank you. Morning all, I'm Angela Allen, I'm Chief Exec of Spring North. I'm one of the VCFSE representatives on this group and Vice Chair.
Morning, Councillor Jonathan Brooke from Westland and Furness, and I'm covering for Councillor Patricia Bell. Okay.
Good morning, I'm Angela Longworth. I work for the Integrated Care Board in the community team as one of the senior community leads in the Strategy Commission Integration Directorate.
Hi, I'm Carmel Wiseman. I'm Palliative and End-of-Life Care Programme Manager working for NHS England, but my role is that I support projects and pieces of work around palliative and end-of-life care across Lancashire and South Cumbria.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Jane Cass. I'm Director of Partnerships and Collaboration for Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board.
Morning, everybody. I'm Craig Harris. I'm the Chief of Strategy, Commissioning and Integration for Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Bennett, Director of Population Health at the ICB, here for item 5 this morning.
Hello all, I'm Dr. Sakti Karunanithy, Director of Public Health and Wellbeing for Lancashire County Council. I'm also here for the same item as Sandra.
Good morning, everyone. Abdul Razak, Director of Public Health at Blackburn and Darwin, Chair of the Public Health Collaborative across Lancashire South Cumbria, and it's a tripartite item on item 5. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claire Richardson, Director of Health Health and Care Integration here at Blackburn with Darwen.
Morning everyone, Tracy Hopkins. I'm Chief Exec at Citizens Advice in Blackpool and I'm here representing the VCFSE.
Good morning, I'm Paula Patel, Performance and Partnerships Manager on behalf of Chorley and South Ribble Councils.
Good morning, I'm Kath Worley. I'm the Director for Adult Services for Westmoreland and Furness Council, and I'm here this morning because Patricia Bell asked me following the last meeting to come along.
Morning, Jeff Jolliffe, GP in Barrow and Furness and Primary Care Partner Member on the ICB. Good point.
Councillor Stephen Atkinson, Leader of Ribble Valley Council. 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 Councillor Stephen Atkinson, Leader of Ribble Valley Council.
Once again, welcome.
Councillor Stephen Atkinson, Leader of Ribble Valley Council.
Once again, welcome. Lancashire and South Cumbria, and I'm also Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing at Lancashire County Council. Can I ask if any members have any declarations of interest, please? No, nothing to declare. In the usual way, if anything comes up during the meeting, just indicate at the appropriate time, please. We've got the minutes of the last meeting on pages 1 to 6. Are we content to accept those as an accurate record of the meeting? Okay, that's formally accepted, and thank you, Josh, as always, for producing those and for being an excellent set of minutes. Any matters that anybody wishes to raise from those minutes that are not covered elsewhere on the agenda? No, okay, moving swiftly on then. A couple of weeks ago, myself and some colleagues around the table gave a presentation to North West employers on the progress that we've made as an integrated care partnership. And that's a meeting that we hold with other similar partnerships from across the North West. And the presentation was very much well received, but I've received a note just a couple of days ago from North West employers, so I just wanted to read this out. I wanted to add my sincere thanks once again to you for your fabulous presentation at the recent Members ICB Network. It was very clear and insightful, and the work that you have achieved to date is very impressive. Your input has provided a solid foundation for us to build upon. Thanks again for all your support, etc., etc. So I don't take that as a personal compliment. I take that as a compliment and praise for all of us. So I wanted to read that out. It's testament to the work that we have done over a relatively short period of time, but the good progress that we've made and the fact that we are being held up as a good example for others to maybe follow. So thank you to each and every one of you for the inputs that you've made to date. Moving on to item 4, we've got the Blackburn with Darwen place-based partnership update. Colleagues, Councillor Talbot.
We managed to work the technology now. It's the on-off switch, technology. There you go, genius. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to say a few words of introduction, then obviously Claire's got the detailed update, which we've got before us. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome everyone here to Blackburn Town Hall and to Blackburn with Darwen. It's, as you can see from the room that we're in, we like to show the town and the borough in its best form. It's a very proud borough. I think just a few words, as I say, I think a number of people who are here today, obviously you'll have visited Blackburn before, but I guess there are others who perhaps haven't. So I just wanted to set out a little bit of background, and I think diversity is a real word that would sort of describe Blackburn with Darwen very, very well. A diversity of people and population and a diversity of place. And obviously we've got diversity across Lancashire and South Cumbria, but I think what we see, I'm Blackburn born and bred myself, but the ethnic diversity that we have across the borough is something that we celebrate a lot, and we've had a lot of migration to the borough over the years. Blackburn as a town has got a very large Asian heritage population, Indian heritage and Pakistan heritage, one of the largest proportionately in the country. That's definitely added to sort of our sort of dynamic population that we've got. And then across Darwin, something that maybe a lot of people might not be aware of, there's a large Italian heritage community in Darwin. People that came during after World War II. So there is a lot of diversity historically. And in more recent times as well, Blackburn has been a dispersal area for about 20 years from the Home Office of asylum seekers and refugees. So we've now got settled communities of Afghan heritage, of Iraq, of Iranian heritage, and from different African countries as well. And we continue to welcome people and do our bit to welcome different populations. And obviously that brings the challenges in itself in terms of language and in terms of those needs as well. And the other diversity is of the geography and the economy of the area. People, I think, perhaps sometimes have an opinion, Blackburn, Milltown, lots of terraced houses. And we do have lots of traditional Victorian terraced houses, but the economy has changed over the years and we have such a range of economy here. But we do have, from some wards with amongst the highest levels of deprivation in the country, areas like Shadsworth in Blackburn, and Soodle, Darwen East in Darwen, and the Blackburn Central ward, which is obviously where we are now, where there's real issues of poverty and massive challenges there, but through to great levels of affluence as well in parts of the borough. And the southern part of the borough, around what we call the West Pennine ward now, is almost entirely rural and quite affluent. And a statistic that we've had quite a few times presented is the variation in life expectancy across the borough being 10 years from the highest, most affluent areas to areas, the ward I represent, Mill and Moorgate, which has one of the lowest life expectancies. So again, that's a huge challenge, but it reflects the history. But I think what I would say is one of the strengths of the borough is the partnerships and the strength of the community. And although we've had a lot of adversity and challenges over the last at least the last 10, 13, 15 years, this is something that Blackburn with Darwen has faced many times in its history, and the community's had to pull together. And we've got there's a volunteer awards event taking place next month, and I understand there have been over 700 nominations for volunteers at that, which just shows really the level of commitment that the community has got. We've got massive challenges, but there's always been a kind of get on with it kind of attitude in Blackburn with Darwen, in my view, and I think that's just something that we continue to push, and we want to work in partnership here. So that's my little introduction, if that's okay, Chair, and I'll pass over to Claire. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. That's really helpful. And once again, it's always a pleasure to actually come to Blackburn with Darwen, so thank you for making us welcome. Claire.
Thank you. I've now got two microphones so I can speak doubly loud. So as I said, Claire Richardson, Director of Health and Care Integration here at Blackburn with Darwen, so work across the ICB and in this local place. My role is to convene the local health and care partnership. It's to work on behalf of the ICB in place and also form strong connections with local authority. So I've got two badges. Strong connections with local authority. So I've got two badges. Strong connections with local authority. So I've got two badges. Strong connections with local authority. So I've got two badges. Strong connections with local authority. So I've got two badges. Strong connections with local authority. So I've got two badges. Strong connections with local authority. The slides for today to talk through, and then hopefully an opportunity for questions on comments. So we can go to the first slide. Talk through. So an opportunity for questions on comments. So we can go to the first slide. Talk through. The alignment of Blackburn with Darwen Place ambitions to the ICP strategy and also the health and wellbeing strategy. So we've started to look at our key themes across our live course. Start well, grow well, live well, age well and die well, and also how that aligns to our work programme. So you'll see in here special educational needs and the local offer is already a key programme within Blackburn with Darwen, so we're making sure that we are forming the right connections within our partnership. For Live Well, things like our workforce, so we've got significant workforce issues across the country. Within Blackburn with Darwen, some specifics around worklessness linked to ill health and carer responsibilities. So working across our partnership as well as the skills board to really think about
employment opportunities to get local people into the right jobs for them and the right opportunities. For Ageing Well, we've launched a positive ageing framework which supports all the organisations and partners working within Blackburn with Darwen to be doing the right things for our middle-aged and ageing population, to keep them fit, well and healthy into old age. And into the Dying Well, as an example, our Getting to Outstanding framework, which I think is referenced in Angela's presentation. So this is about connecting our partners together and really focusing the mind on the things that we can deliver. There's a lot on there. Some of these things, as I say, are in train. Some of these things are fairly practical, transactional projects. Some of them are longer term transformational projects. But what I wanted to show was good alignment strategically. Overarching all of this is quality and safety, so making sure that our services and the offer that we provide to our communities is the best quality and as safe as can be. And running through it all is mental health, so good, healthy minds, and also our neighbourhoods. So neighbourhoods in Blackburn with Darwen established probably about 7 years ago, before we had PCN's primary care networks and before the fuller requirements. So working with our ICB colleagues and our local partners, we have been refreshing and reviewing our neighbourhood model with a view to launching that in November. So some good work, lots of work, hard work and challenging work across our partnership, but good alignment to strategy. Next one, please, Josh. So again, this shows some of the what have we been doing, putting the ICP strategy into action. So doing quite a lot of work, engaging with our residents. So we've commissioned Health Watch through some of the population health funding to really talk to our residents about what it is that makes a difference to them, particularly around accessing hospital services and particularly in our priority wards. So we've got 11 priority wards in Blackburn with Darwen. Health Watch have been doing a great job in engaging with our residents, but also lots of engagement and co-production with our children and young people around our flu vaccinations and our carers and family care. So that's a really significant part of what we need to do going forward and do more of, because our people often know best. Our people often don't want to be done to, they want to be done with. So I think it's a developing piece of work, but something that we're really focused on. For community services, intermediate care is a big priority for us. So mobilising the unit in Ewood, Mill Hill Ewood, to try and get back up to 35 beds, working with our providers and with other partners to make sure that
once everything's
care at the right time for our residents, and also working with our community services to make sure again that we're getting the right community services offer to meet the needs of that diverse community and population that Damien talked about. I've mentioned primary care neighbourhoods, so I won't dwell on that one, but we are aligning our mental health services, so constantly thinking about how can we bring together our services to meet the needs of our populations within that 30 to 50,000 population. Because we, you know, if we had more time, we'd talk through each of our neighbours and our communities. Again, as Councillor Talbot has outlined, our diverse community has different and diverse needs. So one size doesn't fit all, and what we need to do is plan our services to meet those needs. Wider recovery and transformation, significant financial and kind of pressures within capacity pressures across all of our system. So again, trying to identify where the pinch points and the pressures are and working with our services and our residents to understand their needs and plan the services to meet their needs. I've talked about workforce, so the other point that we're working through is our partnership. So again, Damien's talked about the strength of partnership here. We're moving towards our place-based partnership arrangements becoming more formal. That will report into its constituent bodies, but also work closely with our Health and Wellbeing Board. So we're doing things like building our integrated team, doing some organisational development, bringing our partnership together so it's really clear of its shared endeavour and its ambition to really impact on the needs of our local people. Next one, please. Thank you. So again, we are working closely with our residents in relation to the life course. So I won't go through each of those areas, but it just reflects the start well, live well, age well and die well, and the work that we are doing in partnership in Blackburn with Darwin to really focus on local people's needs. Next one, please. Talked about ambitions, so we held an ambition workshop in July with our senior leaders with magic wands, because the magic is in their hands, and often it feels really challenging because of everything that's going on around us, that sometimes feels that we can't move forward. So actually we had a good session thinking about what does good look like for us in 5 years, and identified those key themes. So delivering with our people, how do we fully engage and co-produce our plans? Delivering across the life course, so that's seamless, all-age mental and physical health and social care, and making sure that people get the right support when and where they need it. Delivering integrated services, so there's still a way to go to integrate and join up. We still have our residents telling us that they're telling the story more than once, and their care feels fragmented, which we need to improve and constantly improve. And then developing our partnerships, so a single system delivering better health and care within our allocated budget, because we know financial pressures mean that we've got to be more efficient and effective and spend public money in the best possible way for our residents. Next one, please. So a little bit about our population health rapid improvement programme. So as I said, we've got 11 priority wards in Blackburn with Darwin, and we've been doing this work through a number of key themes. One is listening and engaging through Health Watch with our residents, and we've reached more than 500 residents, or had conversations about what matters to them. And then we've been using our local intelligence through non-elective admissions and ambulatory sensitive care. So the conditions that could be seen in the community but are often seen in the hospital. We've identified 3 wards for rapid improvement across our life course. So the first is Little Harwood and Whitebirk, where we are looking at Start Well. Live Well will be in Blackburn Central, and Age Well will be in Darwin East. We've got oversight through our place-based partnership to look at some of the wider determinants, because we recognise that this is more than health. And we're looking at this as a short-term impact as part of our recovery, recognising that we'll build on this and bring in all sorts of different data sets to really understand the needs of the population. If we listen and hear and respond differently, then we expect that we'll see a difference for our people, and that's what this work is about. I think there was another slide that I don't know is in this pack. Jack, can you just go back to the previous one, please, and I'll just talk through what you could have seen. So actually thinking about Start Well, Live Well and Age Well, for our Start Well, it's a focus on 0 to 19s, and the data that we've seen, those children and young people or families are coming to hospital for respiratory, infectious disease, injury and poisoning, and sort of post-birth experiences. So that gives us a real focus on that 0 to 19 cohort, really gives us an opportunity to talk with our partners and our people about what will make a difference. For Live Well in Blackburn Central, we're focusing on those aged 20 to 65. And again, the conditions that we're looking at are poisoning and injury, digestive, respiratory, circulatory and skin conditions. And for our Age Well cohort above 65, again, respiratory, injury, cardiac and digestive. So whilst this is focused on hospital data, it gives us an understanding of some of the key points and lines of inquiry that we can work with our partners. And as a result of this information, we've set up a number of more in-depth workshops which lead us to some influence in things like our neighbourhoods, primary care, our data, our communication campaign. So we're using this information as a start now through our winter comms with our residents, but also to check that our systems and processes in our neighbourhood teams are working well, that we are identifying people early, that we are case management and case planning. So it helps us really focus the mind on where we need to put our energies. Next one, please, Josh. I think this is the last one in this slide deck. So just a little bit about our governance arrangements. So as I've said, the Place-Based Partnership Board, we're running at the minute in development phase. Our ambition is that that board, that group of partners, will be translating some of the strategy that we talk about here into action. And it will be holding the ring on our joined up delivery, our integrated care delivery. And over time, we will get some delegations to make decisions together. So that's the plan for that board. We're going through a number of self-assessments, and we'll go back to our constituent bodies to say, are we ready then to take those delegations? I've mentioned the integration leadership team, so that is some of our key leaders working together on a more practical basis to get things done and to understand how we can work better together and understand each other better. We're working with the age-specific groups as well that feed into the Health and Wellbeing Board. So again, working together with Health and Wellbeing Board and the partnership to really put a focus into those key areas of delivery. And then we've got our neighbourhood mobilisation. 4 neighbourhoods in Blackburn with Darwen, pretty much coterminous, PCNs and integrated neighbourhood teams. So again, what we're trying to do is get some golden thread of our key themes and priorities and deliverables through our governance arrangements. Then working through our kind of enabler stream, so our workforce is I'd say pretty well established. I think they've met 3 times. We're then working through some of our population health and other streams, and also working with our voluntary sector so that we've got, I suppose, a stronger voice and a more coordinated voice across the sector. So this is emerging, but I just wanted to show the interface with the place-based partnership, our developing local partnership and the wider governance across Lancashire and South Cumbria and in Blackburn with Darwen. So I think that's the end of the slides. I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Claire. That was an excellent presentation. Comments and questions, colleagues? Sinju.
Yeah, thank you.
So the work I think we presented last time at this board, we talked about the place integration deal, and the place integration deal is Lancashire and South Cumbria. So the connectivity around that framework for Lancashire and South Cumbria, I think we've got established. What we then need to start doing is linking things together. So for example, this work, we've got our place-based partnership tomorrow, we've got the skills board, where we're connecting. So it's how we connect, I think, through the existing routes rather than set up a new route. There are 4 of us across Lancashire and South Cumbria, so 4 directors of health and care integration. And I think what we're trying to establish is who's the key person to link into some of those wider forums. So certainly Louise Taylor, the Lancashire Director of Health and Care Integration, is probably more linked into some of that work. But we'll certainly take that back and have a conversation across my colleagues. Locally, we are making those connections, so skills, workforce, growth, certainly there's a significant link within Blackburn.
Okay, St. Thank you. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Claire. You're probably doing all this. I just want to understand where you're up to on what I'm about to ask, and that is The ICS is a very big thing. So place is key in having more local connection. So I'm very keen to understand in all the places, how do individuals, citizens, patients, carers, clinicians, communities connect with you and up to the ICS? Is that work in progress? Is it working well? Is there stuff to do?
There's always work to do. And I think, so we've been an established partnership here for a long time. This new iteration, probably since January, November, December, January. Yeah, so I think we're building. We've talked there about the importance of engagement with citizens and looking, there's multiple forums at the minute across our partners. So we've got a task group again to think about how do we bring some of that together. Other partners probably do that better, so voluntary sector, primary care, local government, and how can we bring that together so our citizens and our residents aren't confused about how they engage. In relation to clinicians and care professionals, we've recently recruited our care professional lead in Blackburn with Darwin. We've got 2 here rather than 1, and working really closely with them on that engagement with our PCN. So I'm going out to PCNs in this next couple of weeks. I'm part of the primary care networks development group, so there's a connection there, and also with our secondary care clinicians. That could always be improved. I think through our voluntary sector, we've got I think a loud, strong, engaged sector here, and I know Angela might want to comment on that. So it's work in progress, Jeff, but it's certainly something that's a key priority for us.
I'll bring Angela into.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're very fortunate in Blackburn with Darwin that we are a unitary authority, but the partnerships are hugely strong and well connected. And a lot of us have been here for a long time, so you know those relationships are entrusted and embedded. I think the lived experience stuff is massively important in terms of community voice. And I think, as Claire said, there's areas for improvement. We could do that better in terms of almost standardising an approach to it. I know that the local authority do that. Whatever policies and strategies that are produced have a lived experience element to it. But I think we could definitely improve on that. So there's more to do. But as Claire pointed out, Healthwatch have been very much engaged in setting the strategy here. It was only 500 residents. You know, that's a percentage of the population, so still work to be done, but very much a focus of our attention.
Thank you. Kevin, please. Jane, please.
Thanks, that's great, Anne. Thank you. We're often challenged, aren't we, by having a strategy that spans the geography of Lancashire and South Cumbria. So I think what Claire has illustrated perfectly is how Blackburn with Darwin Place is contributing to the delivery of that integrated care partnership strategy. Claire, I guess I'll ask back to you. Next time we are welcomed into Blackburn with Darwin for the integrated care partnership meeting, I wonder whether we could hear an update in terms of some of the progress that you're making against the deliverability of the strategy. I think that would be great for us to hear. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Jane. St John, can I bring you back in?
Do you want me to quit? So as I say, we've had working closely with Martin Kelly as our Director of Growth and Development. We've got a session tomorrow at our place-based partnership where we're talking about skills and workforce. So do I suppose this is a whistle-stop tour? I could go on for days about the work that we're doing in Blackburn with Darwin. I might bore you. But what I wanted to focus on today was an introduction. There's a significant opportunity here as part of our growth plans to really think about how do we get those opportunities for our people, and that connection with from childhood ambition through to our ageing well population and opportunity. I think for us, understanding the need is one thing. Recognising that we've got a whole load of gaps and vacancies too in our health and care system, and have been doing things like as part of the GCSE results, we work together as a health and care partnership to offer opportunities for our young people when they've got their results. So it's small scale at the minute, but those opportunities are starting to build. So it's certainly on the agenda, and certainly something, you know, I sit on the council leadership team, so every Monday morning we're able to have those conversations about opportunities, which we're building.
Yep, thank you. I think those two links between health and wealth are really important. Thanks for that. Can I bring Abdul in, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Really, just to add, really, for St John and for the ICP, Blackburn and Darwin Council actually runs really every 6 to 12 months really a number of job fairs. Really, we had one with the mayor really at the King George's Hall really, where we actually promote all of our career opportunities. So hundreds of our workforce and our wider communities actually engage within those job events in terms of recruiting and retention from within our community. In terms of ELHT, our East Lancashire Hospitals Trust, they're part of the Skills Board as well. And I know that Kate Quinn is heavily engaged really in terms of the work that... So we have something called the Health Equity Alliance, which you'll have seen on the presentation really, and that is another partnership really within the Trust that we're all privy to really. And within that, there is also academic representation as well from UCLAN, and we are looking at how we can make sure really that the vacancies are actually recruited to in terms of the actual workforce development plans that are actually in place at the ICB. A good example of that would be, just to give you a specific example really, ELA, East Lancashire Hospitals Trust, for example, has done a huge amount of work around ensuring that veterans are actually recruited back into and rehabilitated back into community. So there's a lot of recruitment really around a number of roles which are non-clinical but are essential to actually keep our health and care system actually functioning. So those are clear examples really of what we're actually doing at the front line. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I've got Stephen and Damien next.
Thank you, Chair. Really interesting first meeting, and I wasn't going to say anything, but I think it's important what I do say. If we're talking about place-based initiatives, what I've seen at Lancashire Leaders over the last 5 years is the unitaries really understand their place. Lancashire at the county council level, this is no criticism, is very strategic and great at a strategic level. So what I would say is be careful. If you want to push decisions up to Lancashire 2050 and the Combined Authority, you will probably lose that place-based knowledge. So that's just my experience of 5 years. I mean, I think Lancashire 2050 is great, bring devolution, but don't lose the advantages of the place-based knowledge. Thank you.
I think that's absolutely key. The place-based knowledge and working is key, and Lancashire 2050 is an overarching thing, which has significant merits. But yeah, the place-based side of it is crucial. Damien.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, it was just, I mean, it's all a linked discussion from what St John said before. I think that point about wealth for health is really good. And I think it's just to give reassurance of the absolute keen focus on growth that we've got in the Blackburn-with-Darwen area. If you look at the, you know, from the local authorities' point of view, there's just a constant push for where can we look at funding opportunities. And, you know, there's no politics in this. We don't, frankly, care who's in government as long as Blackburn-with-Darwen as an area gets as much as we possibly can in terms of resources. You know, we've got, obviously, approval on levelling up funding and, you know, town centre campus and town deal in Darwen and places like that, you know, and it's coming into the hundreds of millions in the end. So it does show the potential for investment which will create the wealth, which will then benefit the health without a shadow of a doubt. I think on the Lancashire 2050, I mean, it was interesting to hear Steve's point there, because obviously we are unitary and we have championed the unitary model for many years. And, you know, obviously we don't want to drift into a discussion about local government reorganisation, but I think we do know our sense of place in Blackburn-with-Darwen, and I think that comes out in this document. But I hope that gives assurance. I mean, you know, on the 2050 and the Devo deal, etc., Councillor Phil Riley, who's our leader, has been absolutely at the centre of all the discussions, and he has indicated he might pop into this meeting this morning, so you might see him sat at the back if he makes it here. That's all it was. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. Phil will be very welcome to join the meeting if he wishes to do so. Tracy.
Thank you. Yeah, to kind of echo what the people have said, I mean, place-based work is absolutely vital for our communities. If we're going to change things, it's going to absolutely be at place. One of the things I was really pleased to see, Claire, is that housing is in there, because the work that we're doing at the Place-Based Partnership in Blackpool, that is one of the key priorities. And I think similar to what St John was saying about not always focusing on health and thinking wider, to me, housing is absolutely one of those wider determinants of health that needs to be something that we pick up as a priority at all places. Linking to that, but also to some of the things that Angela said in response to Claire's kind of like involvement of communities, I think because this is an integrated system and because we're concentrating on places within it, there's so much opportunity for us to learn from each other across places, and it's how we make sure we don't lose some of that as we develop our place-based partnerships and get more involved in place. So one of the things that we're doing in Blackpool is very much around that co-production with communities, that embedding that lived experience into all of the things that we're doing. I think we could learn a huge amount from you in terms of the things you're developing, and it's kind of where that happens and how we facilitate that I think is important. But I'm not sure, I know we've created quite a lot of the mechanisms, but, and I know you work really in a really integrated way with your colleagues, so you work with Karen Smith and Karen Kyle in Blackpool, but I wonder if there's other ways, particularly maybe through our alliance in the voluntary sector and the wider assembly, where we could do some more of that work and really understand how we can learn from what's happening and what's going well in each place.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah. So again, loads of opportunities. I think what we've tried to do is set the framework across Lancashire and South Cumbria with the place integration deal, and then get to focus. So we need to be mobilising this in our places, but there are multiple opportunities, and I meet with my colleagues at least weekly. I know our teams meet at least weekly. It's those opportunities now to start to think about best practice. We have established a subgroup, or it will be a subgroup of the board, to manage some of this work. You know, we've got opportunities through our commissioning colleagues, our directors of health, directors of adult services and DCSs. So I think what we now need to do is start to think about how do we do that sharing of best practice, but also what are the things that are really important that we continue to do together. because some of this work, the frameworks, the expectations, the outcomes, the funding, will need to be established across Lancashire and South Cumbria. The learning, the assurance, the accountabilities, again, for me, into the ICB and into our constituent bodies, but there are loads of opportunities for learning from each other. So we'll take up that offer of that co-production, won't we, Angela, and come and visit, and maybe arrange a visit back. That'd be really helpful.
Sounds very positive, thank you. Jeff, please.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think I chair this place-based steering group within the ICB, and I think Tracy's hit on something really, really important. We have 4 very talented place-based leaders, 4 people who are all very different, with different skill sets, and they will work better together, and they know that. So that's part of the mission, is to excel in your own place, respond to your own place's different needs, but then come together. That's the ambition, and to learn from each other and to work together with each other and help each other. So that's got to be the ambition of where the places will be more than the sum of the parts, and we're working on that.
Yeah, thank you. Angela, of course.
Sorry, this conversation is going on and on. I think that point about sharing learning is vital, isn't it? Because even in the most beautiful places, Westmoreland and Furness and Ribble Valley, you know, they've got housing issues. Maybe not the same housing issues as we have in Blackburn with Darwin, but issues are there. So actually, can we drill down into those health-focused subject areas to learn from one another? And I think it would be really good, without it being a race to, you know, excellence, is comparing and contrasting where those overlaps are across the whole of the ICS area. So yeah, I think we need to do more jointly and learn from the experts, but develop as a partnership, because across the partnership we've got that experience and knowledge as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, it's been a good discussion. Can I thank Claire and Damien for the work that you're doing, and once again for the presentation. I think it's really positive, and we look forward to an update as a future meeting. Yeah, I'm sure lots of us can take things away from that and achieve improvements across the area. Thank you. Can I now take us on to agenda item 5, which is a bit of a triple act, I understand. So it's Andrew, Saxi and Abdul are going to take us through this item, please. Over to yourselves, gentlemen.
Thank you. No more references to boy bands, please. This would be a very unlikely combination. Thank you, colleagues, for the invitation to come today. And it is a triple act, and the presentation and what we're bringing to you today is an expression of collaboration, and that's what you've just been speaking about. You've just been talking about how do we work in places and neighbourhoods, and then when we work together. And I think that's what this slide set is about, actually. It's designed to create a conversation with the ICP, but it builds on some of the work that we've been doing in collaboration across our public health and NHS population health teams, particularly in the last 12 months, but probably beyond that as well. So in your pack you have a slide set. It picks up at slide 20, and we'll just touch on that. I'm going to lead off, and Abdul and Sakthi will also comment on various aspects of the slide. We are really conscious that the ICP has a very coherent strategy. It has a level of ambition and congruence, and we're touching on different aspects of that today. Really helpful that we're coming after Claire, because in a sense, your presentation, Claire, talks about what that means in a place, and we're giving some examples of what it means at a system level, but they're both important, and the conversation we've just had speaks to that. So we're going to talk particularly about some of the work we're doing within the context of living well, and we're doing it partly with the recognition that local health and wellbeing boards, the place-based partnerships, as Claire's just described, and the ICB, all of these groups are talking about these things and trying to make sure that we're taking the right action at the right level. There are 3 particular examples of some of this work that we wanted to touch on this morning. There's a little bit of detail in your pack. and Abdul and Sakti will do that. But I think the word that I want you to have in your mind when you're listening to this is ambition. It's Claire's word from before. How ambitious do you want this to be? Because if you set a level of ambition, that's what we're looking for in the way that we work together. And I think that was in our minds as we built the slide set. Josh, thank you. Do you mind moving on to the next slide, please? And we had, I suppose, 4 areas that we wanted your perspective on, if you don't mind. How do you view the pace of this ambition, the level of scale of this ambition? Whether we're working in places, as we've just heard, or whether we're working together at the system level. How ambitious do you want this to be? Because that will dictate some of the focus and the commitment to the work. We're going to touch on the Public Health Collaborative, which we regard as a very significant resource of people with expertise and a willingness to work together. How might we use that to enable some of the change that we're talking about in the system? And we've got some examples of that in the slides, as you see. We have started to look at some of the measures or metrics that would judge whether we're making progress. So Councillor Talbot, you spoke about the one that hangs very heavily over Lancs and South Cumbria and has for years. Why have we got such significant variances in life expectancy or healthy life expectancy? No point sitting in an oak-panelled committee room talking about enjoying being in partnership unless it makes a difference to very difficult issues like that. And it's going to take time to make a difference on issues like that. So again, helpful as we go through this discussion, just to get your sense of, do you want to see a set of metrics like that? What would be important to you? How might we do that? And I think, again, as Claire's presentation and then the pick-up with St John and some of the discussion you've then had, different organisations in the partnership need to play their roles. And it's understanding what role is for the NHS, what role is for the voluntary sector in delivering on an ICP strategy with this level of scale and ambition. So we've got a number of those things in our minds as we've heard you already discuss. Thank you, Josh. This is a slide that we've used quite a bit in recent months because it allows us to judge different action that we might take over different timescales. So in the bottom of the slide there, you can see the timelines over 15 to 20 years. And making judgments about actions that we can take in the short term. Claire talked about talking with priority wards and the communities in priority wards, people that might already be unwell and what their experiences are that we could do something about in terms of access or experience of healthcare or other services. How do we do that in the short term so that we're helping people that are already unwell get to where they need to get to? But then, of course, there are the issues that have occupied directors of public health for many years. Giving people information about their healthy lifestyle choices. And even beyond that, talking about housing, talking about leisure or transport in ways that tackle the underlying determinants of care. That's in the ICP strategy. So how do we balance the work that we're doing at these different levels of timeline? That's been in our minds. And at this point, I think I'm handing over so we can tell you a bit more about the Public Health Collaborative.
Thanks very much, really, Andrew. The Public Health Collaborative of Cumbria, Lancashire, really, has been in existence over a period of 10 years. And since my arrival in post in Blackpool and Darwin, it's been a collaborative effort, really, with our ICB colleagues and with the Directors of Public Health and the Consultant Collaborative to actually make sure that we reshape the collaborative in line with our aspirations. So what we've done around the collaborative really is we've brought together an MOU, a legally binding MOU across the upper tier authorities in particular, and brought together a level of funding which is funded through local authority systems to ensure that there is a core team that is actually supporting the collaborative, including a program manager and a project support. That assists really with strengthening the overall architecture and making sure really that we're able to actually fulfill our obligations and duties. The collaborative is truly collaborative. It has representation from our regional colleagues, OHID, from UCSA, It has representation from our community voluntary sector who are actually invited. We also have our ICB colleagues into the population health team as regular members on there as well. And we meet as a leadership group meeting every 4 weeks. And then in between we have Friday meetings as well. So there is also a consultant and registrar's public health collaborative where in terms of our workforce, and they meet on a monthly basis as well, really, to actually feed into the leadership group meeting in terms of key public health and population health priorities. So the collaborative is open to our population health colleagues. So Andy Knox, for example, is a key member. So really we are, you know, the aspiration really is very much about, I chair the collaborative. It's very much about inclusion, collaboration, it's about synergy, and it's actually about making things actually then happen in terms of one voice between population and public health. And the overarching aim clearly is to actually reduce health inequalities, to improve population health outcomes and provide better care to our residents. And we are working hand in glove really with, I'm also the co-chair of the Prevention and Health Inequality Steering Group with Dr. David Levy at the ICB as well. So we are truly integrated in that sense really from a governance and in terms of the actual programme delivery perspective as well. Next slide, Josh, please. So what are we doing really? So the collaborative actually has a work programme, and it has 3 main ambitions in line really with the ICB and the health and wellbeing strategies. A best start in life, healthier hearts, happier minds. The second aspiration really is strengthening teams through collaboration, knowledge and skills development, which we've talked about, adapting to the changes in the actual landscape and maximising our leadership and our workforce. And the third element really clearly is to make sure that our resources are maximised for best effect. So that's best value, it's about governance, it's about our communications, it's about our data and intelligence, but it's really about how do we bring all of those anchor institutions to bear, which is what we've been describing this morning. So there are 15 elements within the actual programme, and we are here this morning really and to actually describe at least two if not 3 of those elements. And I'm going to hand over at this point really to Sathi, who will go through those 3 distinct living well elements. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul. I'll be as quick as we possibly can. So if we can take tobacco smoking out of our population, we would have at least reduced a quarter of our cancers, more than that actually, heart disease, and actually create a much better next generation. I'm really pleased that it is actually being taken seriously with the announcement of the new legislation. And we were already working on this from a CON review point of view. So this is a truly system-level collaboration in making our futures smoke-free. Number of things, connecting services between hospitals and communities, as well as engaging with communities itself and working regionally and nationally. We have been able to make the best use of the extra funding that we've received over the last few years, and you would have seen through your respective boards, including health and wellbeing boards, that we have all signed up to tobacco-free Lancashire and South Cumbria as a strategy. It does include a specific element on vaping as well, and we're very closely monitoring the policy position nationally in helping our young people enjoy their lives smoke-free and also not be addicted to nicotine through vapes. Next one, Josh, please. Thank you. And that goes to the next priority we've collaborated on across the system, is on basically taking the pressure off. We know the needs in terms of people with high blood pressure. We don't know about all of them. About 2/3 we know very well, but the more deprived the area, the more diverse the area, we know less about them. And when it comes to actually treating them effectively, that reduces further. And every 25 to 40 people we successfully treat for hypertension. You can prevent heart disease, stroke, and that goes the same for atrial fibrillation as well. And that has been a recently committed workshop across the system to actually take the pressure off the system in making blood pressure not a public health or population health risk factor. There's some challenges, particularly in terms of access into communities to actually detect those risk factors, as well as the capacity to successfully engage with residents with high blood pressure and other cardiovascular risk factors. One of the things we are doing more and more is getting into businesses and workplaces and more into the community. The last example that we wanted to chat about is what we're developing for the future, and particularly around suicide prevention. It is a significant issue across Lancashire and South Cumbria, ranging from basic needs and financial security to relationship breakdown to actually access to treatment, as well as supporting families bereaved after the incident. So I chair the System Suicide Prevention Oversight Group. Great examples of real-time or near real-time information sharing between partners, from blue lights to transport to hospitals. You would have seen some schemes like the Orange Button scheme, removing stigma and making it possible for everybody to be confident about talking about mental health and suicides, and just checking in to see if everyone's okay. And that seems to be very popular in many workplaces, but we need to do more in understanding that, particularly young people, particularly men, younger men. Workforce, we do not attract and retain staff like many other specialties. Often population health, public health specialties don't get enough attention, so we have committed to collaborate across and with colleagues in the ICB. More to do with other agencies, so it's not all about having that specialist qualification. It's about enabling people working in the housing sector, working in education, working in transport and communities, seeing their role and encouraging them to be part of the wider workforce community. There is a newsletter, as you can see. We want to engage more with the rest of the system partners on that. I think that covers the main part of our input. A couple of leaving remarks from myself, if that's okay. This is necessary but not sufficient. If you go back to the ambition that we've set out in the strategy, we could deliver services more efficiently with technology, but that on its own is not sufficient to really reduce the health inequality indicators. As a system, we often talk about the supply side reforms and managing demand. You can just reflect back on your diaries for the last week and the week before. How much time have you actually spent, each of us, on actually understanding the need? That's really the fundamental driver of demand. And we spend quite a bit of time on reforming the supply side, making it cheaper, making it innovative, but actually the needs are far, far outstripping supply and demand. So we need to be approaching our needs differently. And that doesn't happen just through population health and public health collaboratives. And the final point is really about reaching out and reaching deeper into making our growth agenda more inclusive, our environment more healthier, whether that is indoor environment or outdoor environment, transport making it more sustainable, which also has health benefits, education more fairer, especially younger people who missed out in the last 4 or 5 years. They're coming through the system with mental health issues. And finally, but not least, making our homes lifelong homes. All of these things are connected, and that's the agenda that we really have the opportunity to actually address the needs of the population, basic needs like food, fuel. You are going to see that in the coming winter. So we're mobilizing on all the other things that you haven't heard in those 15 bullet points, but it does need a paradigm shift in committing towards longer term. Long-term planning is there for housing. Long-term planning is there for place planning, for growth planning. We have a long-term plan on paper for health, but realistically, most of our plans are this year financial balance, next year's demand management and workforce. So I really encourage, this is the best place to actually have a long-term vision for health for the whole system. And we are really keen and want your support to actually protect some resources for long-term health outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one slide to finish. and then back to those questions, if I may. Josh, would you just go over, yeah, and then go into the next slide, please, because the content on here is easier to see in your pack than I suspect it is on screen. But just, again, pointing to where Sakti's just finished his comments, we can choose a range of metrics to measure progress, and sometimes what we measure matters, doesn't it? And what we don't measure might matter more. But these are some of the examples that we could think of measures that the ICP might want to hold over the short and medium and longer term to see whether we're actually making the progress that we aspire to. So again, your views on that in the conversation might be really helpful at this stage. Josh, and then that final slide, just a reminder, Chair, of those opening areas for discussion. Thank you. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you, gentlemen. Really interesting, thought-provoking. I think shifting that dial towards longer term is a key challenge because, you know, probably lots of us around the table think in shorter term measures, whether that's politicians that think about a 4-year term for obvious reasons, whether it's the NHS that have to match with budgets and so on. But shifting that dial to the longer term, making that real difference that we need to make is going to be key if we're going to improve outcomes for residents of Lancashire and South Cumbria. So anything that we can do to take that forward, I think, is something that we should be focusing on. Colleagues, comments and questions. Kevin, please. Thanks, Kevin. I would agree with that. That so many organisations and meetings that I go to, they come up with 20 priorities. Well, you simply cannot have 20 priorities. You end up having no priorities at all and focusing on a small number and making that real difference that is a sensible way forward. Howard, please.
Thanks, Michael. I think in those questions is a little bit of something about working together and activation. It's a partnership meeting, so I'm going to talk about partnerships. I think what would be really helpful and have a huge impact would be if partners were activated and we could access some of this data. And I'll give you an example. Hospices just want to provide the best possible care, and end-of-life care is intensive, expensive, difficult thing to do right. And where we've had data, and we got this through the LCC Insights team, so I got some Preston data, and I'll give you a specific example. 2 GPs only 400 yards apart in Preston. One sent 75% of people to die in hospital. Nobody wants that. The other one sent 25% to hospital. And the hospices looked after people in their homes, in the hospice, in the care homes. So that's massive. Just getting that data and just being able to talk to partners locally on our patch had a huge impact. I mean, I've not done all the metric stuff, but, you know, all that effort going to hospitals, all the cost of it, and it's not what people want. People don't want that. So more importantly, it's giving people what they want, and it's improving health equity. So there's something in there
for me about activating partners, making it easy to access this data or something around that. I think that would have, like, it's you and the pebble in the pond, and the ripples is us lot. And it's not just hospices, it's all sorts of folk, I reckon.
Angela? Thank you. I've got a long list of speakers, so don't think I'm ignoring you, but that's good to see that this has provoked a lot of interest, so that's great. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the question you ask, Andrew, about ambition is really important, and it's got to be high, hasn't it? If we don't have high ambition in this chamber, then what does the rest of the system think of us? So, and I agree exactly with what Kevin said. I think focus on a few things and do them really well. I think that's a really good point. I wanted to talk about primary care, because that's my area of expertise, but I think the principles can be expanded to lots of other areas. But if you can just bear with me for 30 seconds, we need to do things differently in a system that's got limited resource, or we can't achieve what we want to achieve. And primary care is often, I'm going to be critical of my own profession, is both shackled by a national contract that doesn't allow a lot of flexibility, and by individual businesses that all want to do their own thing. So we all know that. GPs, half the time, don't being told what to do, but half the time I think they do. And I think this is one of these areas where they would like to be told what to do in terms of doing things differently. So if we're going to achieve that ambition, GPs are going to have to stop doing some things so much, so well, and focus on the things that matter to our strategy. They can't do everything. And there are mitigations and ways around that. But we need to give permission to them to say that you're allowed to do this. And if you do that as a system, and people complain, say, this is what we do around here, this is what we've agreed, and there's no conflict between patients and doctors and practices versus practices. So I think we need to give permission at that local level. At a system level, I think what we're going to do is something really difficult, and it won't go down well in the more well-off areas of the system. But we need to focus our funds differentially to support primary care in the areas of most need, which is usually, not always, the areas of most deprivation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Stephen, please.
I think if we're talking about priorities for this group, the biggest priority is that we all pull together and inform each other to work better. And if I can give an example of that, we've talked briefly about mental health and young men or boys 16, 17, 18. And the levels of anxiety in young people that starts, and it's starting with social media. And if we lose them out of school, that leads to a catastrophic sequence of events, including losing educational opportunity, low-paid jobs, low self-esteem, potentially leading into an unhealthy lifestyle. And I think one of the big opportunities of this group is for early intervention and how the health service works with the upper tier authorities, so we can get to these children before it becomes an issue requiring support from LCAS, which is very expensive and a limited resource. So I understand the need to have a few priorities, but the costs of not tackling this issue early will be substantial, not just in financial, but in lost opportunity and real sad stories. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point, well made. And I think in general, I think we need to think about how we shift towards prevention, because shifting resources upstream can make a massive difference further down the line. Yes, it is longer term, but it's something that we need to move towards, in my humble opinion. Jane, please.
Thank you. I think it's great that the collaborative is working in the way that it's working, and more to come. I think it just really strengthens our focus on public and population health. So brilliant to hear that. I guess just a couple of points for me. The first is the Integrated Care Partnership Strategy is a 5-year strategy. So that really should focus our minds, shouldn't it, in terms of the things that we really want to focus on to deliver this strategy, and really think about the impact that we can have in that time. Some of that may well be a journey towards where we want to be longer term, and if we chunk it up in that way, it will enable us to think through what we can really play back and demonstrate as a collaborative our achievements. And then just the final point for me is we can often be overwhelmed by the amount of data that is available to us and the metrics that we can measure ourselves against. And I think we just need to give some thought to some really punchy and impactful metrics where we can really demonstrate our effectiveness. And we're happy to work with you outside of the meeting to be able to identify a few of those to play back to the partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, I think some further work offline would be really helpful, actually, Jane. So yeah, it's a good suggestion. Thank you. I've got Vicky next, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, just some practicalities around that theme of metrics, really. When we were developing our strategy in this group, we always said that we wanted to focus in on a number of key metrics that would tell us how we're doing as a collective. And I think it's fair to say that all 4 of our places are also grappling with that conundrum of what are the relatively small, manageable set of metrics that tell us how we're doing as true partnerships in place. So any offer of support from the Population and Public Health Collaborative to do that would be most welcome, and I'm sure I speak for all of my place-based colleagues, at least when I say that. I guess the trick is to find a set, as Jane says, that's meaningful. We know that many of the metrics that we would be interested in as this group relate to the strategy and actually are going to take a generation to change. We've heard you guys say that quite a number of times. But if we can drill down into something that's useful at neighbourhood level, at place level, at system level, and perhaps have the ability to scale that so that we can understand what's needed by our communities, but then also the impact that we're having. Just to echo some of the points that have been made by Tracy and Angela as well, it would be really helpful for us to think outside the box from some of those traditional health-related metrics and really think about what matters to our communities. So what is it that they would like to see being different as a consequence of some of our work to improve health and well-being, address health equity, tackle some of those wider determinants of health. So similar offer, I think places would really welcome the opportunity to work as part of a joint effort to design what that looks like and to understand how we can use it to work from an insights perspective, but also a measuring success perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. I've just noticed that Councillor Phil Riley has joined the meeting. Phil's the leader of Blackburn with Darwen Council. Thank you for allowing us to use your wonderful venue this morning, Phil. It's nice to see you. That's fine. Yeah. Thanks for popping in. St John. Thank you. I've got Damien, please, next.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I support all the comments made so far, and I think just in terms of priorities, I think Kevin's point about keeping them tight is absolutely key, because as you know, has been said, having lots and lots of priorities and then you actually achieve very little, I think that's really important. But I think that Steve's point about adding in mental health there, I think that is important. You know, Angela's comments earlier about suicide and the support there just shows how vitally important it is that we do look at the importance of mental health. I think that my other point really is about how we really do achieve these things, because you know, we've talked before about the resource, the lack of resource. At previous meetings, we've talked about budget gaps across the Northwest, whether it's in the health system. But it's obviously not just about throwing money at things. It's not just saying, well, we need lots more money. We'd love to have lots more money. But it's clear to me that it's about restructuring and you know, how efficient we are, how we deliver those services. And a lot of this for me is about how embedded the services are sort of in the core of everything we do. And I've had this exec member responsibility for maybe 3 or 4 years now in Blackburn with Darwin. And I have to admit, before I was the executive member for public health, I can't say, well, I don't know a huge amount now. I'm only a councillor at the end of the day and not a health professional. But as a borough councillor, understanding what public health was all about, it's very, very difficult to get your head around, really. And it's like, well, there's lots and lots of contracts out there. How can we influence things, you know, as the public health functions come into local government when everything's out to contract? And, you know, we have a sort of a £15 million budget in Blackburn with Darwin within public health. But I think having become the executive member, I've sort of started to understand actually it's part of everything we do. You know, we can have an input into every single service and every single policy of the council, and again across all services. And you know, it talks about the collaborative sort of improving and building those relationships. And I think that's part of this. It's actually getting us embedded into everything everyone does across health, across local government, across all the sectors. You know, and obviously it's easy to get sidetracked with all the firefighting as well. So the focus is the other point. You know, we can have these ambitions, and Abdul came to Blackburn with Darwin about a year ago. We've got lots of ambitions for improving health in Blackburn with Darwin, but we've had the pandemic to deal with in the last 3 years. We've got the cost of living crisis. It's so easy to be sidetracked by all those different things that you have to deal with. So if we can keep these priorities through all that and still achieve something, I think that'll be a great success. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Damien. I would echo all the comments that you just made. Tracy, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make quite a practical point around one of the things in the presentation that talks about communities getting involved in defining some of the metrics that we use. I think sometimes, and it kind of plays to the point of not having too much and too many metrics, but I think sometimes we ask our communities to get involved in decision making, and we don't always realise how we've built in equity into the system. And that to me is where we need to really get clever on how we measure things in a very different way. Because sometimes, and you said it, Andrew, where you place the emphasis and what you measure is so vital and so important. Also, often it's where you put the resources as well. So I just want to give you a really practical example, and I spoke to your colleague Paul Hegarty about this only last Friday. We've done quite a bit of work in Blackpool around hypertension through Core 20+5, and one of the really inspiring things that we did is we brought together people across the system with people in the community who had experienced hypertension. And one of the messages that came out very loud and very clear to us was people feel quite inhibited to go and have the blood pressure measured at the GPs when they don't have a cuff large enough to fit around their arm. So we, you know, a lot of people were really open with us about that, and it took a lot of courage for them to come to these meetings and sit alongside GPs and clinicians and pharmacists and really talk about their experience. And clearly that is such a barrier, because if somebody is diagnosed with hypertension and it's not being monitored and they're not getting the right medication, you know, it plays into all the things we talked about in terms of people ending up at A&E when they really don't need to be. And one of the things that's quite frustrating is what I said last Friday is we found this out many months ago. We listened to our communities, we got this feedback, but even now other people are going into the surgeries and they're still finding the same problem. And to me, that's the kind of things we need to be measuring. And I even said, you know, practically they cost about £40 to £60, these cuffs. Can we not just buy some and give them to all the surgeries across Blackpool, if not across the whole of Lancashire South Cumbria? Now, I know that's me working in the voluntary sector, not having to deal with bureaucracy and red tape and trying to solve problems on the ground really quickly. I think the advantage of us as a sector is we can do that. I understand there's a lot more difficulty across local authorities and the NHS to do that. But I think if we are going to listen to our communities, we need a plan of action in terms of what we do as a result of that. And I think there are some really practical things like that that we can do, that people are telling us that we can do. And I suppose it's my plea to you around your collaborative, around the work that you're doing around what we're measuring and how we're listening to communities about defining those measures. How do we make a bit more of this kind of, how do we make it fluid so that it can really happen when we know what the problem is? How do we solve it fairly quickly?
Thank you, Tracy, for a very practical example, but that brings it to life, doesn't it? How do we transform what we are offering to the residents ultimately then transform those outcomes? I have no more questions at this stage, so if I can bring Abdul, Sakfi and Andrew back in to respond to some of the points which have been made, please, and then if there are any follow-up questions, we'll take those.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you so much really for your contributions and for the conversation this morning. We've noted a number of key points really from each of the ICP members really in terms of suicide prevention, clearly the metrics. I think there is an element within the conversation this morning around what is health, what is wealth, but really how do we hand back the health and well-being back to the residents really in terms of their own health and well-being. There is a dual responsibility here. We have a responsibility as services to actually provide services, but there's also, as citizens also have a duty of responsibility within their, within communities themselves. And there's a huge amount of clearly community mobilisation, but ultimately monitoring and how we think about health and care, I think, is one of the most interesting dynamic conversations really around, because we've been very paternalistic for many, many years, decades in fact. So therefore, what is health of the population really in terms of how do communities themselves, in terms of their voice, perceive it really in terms of being recipients, passive recipients sometimes, rather than actually being active co-producers of health and well-being, and in terms of co-production. So I think ultimately I'd like to see a lot more of that work, and then the metrics element of it would be very, very different. It wouldn't be what we can measure and what data we've got available. It would be really what is actually then collated in a very, very different way. As some of that work has already started as a co-production within our adult social care colleagues in terms of co-production. Cathy and colleagues have actually been doing a lot of work around that. So those are my observations, really. But thank you so much this morning. I'll hand over to Sathy and Andrew.
Thanks, Abdul. Thank you, everyone. Just reflecting on everything that's gone on. Thank you for the endorsement of the work that we've done so far, and for encouraging us to do what you've just asked us to do. Just reflecting back, I think you'll find a small set of priorities already exist, but what we haven't done is really got behind it. So in every part of the place and neighbourhoods and all of that, we've got a Best Start for Life program for babies born, young people. We have got happier hearts and healthier hearts and happier minds, if you want to call it, hearts and minds. We've got programs all over our system that really focuses on some specifics on that. So I think it is really evident to me that we do have those small number of priorities, but we haven't really surfaced it and really got behind. So it's an opportunity for us. I mean, we are boundary spanners in some sense. So we sit in local government, largely with Andrew in the NHS. We look to districts. We work really closely at the community level, community groups, to use our collaborative as one of your boundary spanners. If that doesn't make sense, it's use us to connect with the wider determinants as well as with the service agenda. So housing, transport, economy, we're all connected in our world. I want to reflect back a couple of asks at a system level. We're all doing things hardest and best possible at place level and neighbourhood level. But I'm taking away this is a mandate to work it to be even better. But my thoughts are we need 2 or 3 things from a system level from the ICP. And the first one really is recognition and endorsement for having the need for a longer term plan and not be always caught with rugs pulled under our own feet, not just us 3, but our own feet under our system. A bit like we've got a place planning process, we need a health planning process that sets our commitment. Not the entire checkbook of the NHS and the wider system, but what we currently spend. I think as part of that, we need something like the Better Care Fund, a Better Health Fund. Yeah? A Section 75 would show the system commitment that is longer term with the slightly different differentials applied on the return on investment over a longer period of time. So that's my first ask. This, support, really, in making your vision reality. The second thing I would say is this commitment to develop our workforce on their skills and development from not just from the current workforce, from a future workforce as well. We really want to, we have started it in our public health collaborative, but it feels tiny, but it could be a lot better if we connect up with our workforce plan in the NHS, but particularly with the HEIs. You know, the new world looks very different to me in 10 years' time, the diagnostics, the treatment modalities, as well as what is needed to empower people, communities. And then third one is more of a cultural thing. We've been in a number of forums where plans are checked and challenged. I'm sure you've all been in check and challenge events and forums. Let's change that to sharing and learning events a bit. So there's enough of checking going on and challenging going on. But if we really want to commit ourselves to a long-term better future, we need to live and breathe a little bit, you know, at least once a month or once a year at least. Let's have a share and learn session. So that's a cultural request from myself. I'm looking to Abdul and Andrew. I'm sure they'll support me. So really, really grateful for your feedback. And we're taking it as an endorsement to the work, but we can only do that with your support in the way that I at least have described. But on the metrics,
all I wanted to say on the metrics, Chair, was could we come back perhaps in a couple of months and we could again bring colleagues up to date with where we've got to with that work, and it would be health equity metrics, just to answer your question, if that would be okay, if we can book ourselves back in, please. Thank you.
Yeah, just looking around the table, I don't see any objection to that. That would be much welcomed. So if we probably include that on the agenda for the January meeting. Would that be okay, Andrew? Super. Colleagues, any further questions or comments? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the work that you've done, and a bit more work is going to be done offline as well. So look forward to that and look forward to the subsequent updates in the future. Thank you. Okay, moving on then. So I've got, moving on, item 6, palliative and end-of-life care, and an update on dying well, which I think commences, for those of you with the papers, on page 29. And I've got Angela and Carmel that are going to introduce that, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having us at the meeting this morning today. We've been asked to come to provide an update around the palliative and end-of-life care and dying well work led by the ICB and how that integrates into this partnership strategy. And it's interesting now, some of the work that's already been described today, you'll see sort of themes and links to our work that we're going to talk about today. So lots that link into place that Claire's talked about, lots that link into sort of population health. This is about sort of trying to make dying well sort of everybody's business, normalising those conversations, working with our workforce, volunteers, families, carers, to make those conversations sort of everyday conversations, in a sense to avoid crisis when it comes to end-of-life care, making sure that people are aware of each other's sort of wants and wishes, really, where people want to die, what they want to happen, and I suppose the processes and support that can be in place up to that point, really. Obviously aware of sensitivities around the subject that we're talking about. I'm sure everybody around this table has got their own experience of somebody close to them dying, whether that's a positive experience or not. So mindful about that we don't always get this right, but actually, I suppose, acknowledging that and being mindful that this work is about trying to get it right for more people, and being able to put systems and processes and people in place to get that right more often than not. So I suppose just an awareness about that, really. This isn't just about, sorry, can we move to the next slide? So this isn't just about health. It's about making this everybody's business, and we as a system support palliative and end-of-life care and dying well as well. So we've talked, if we move on to the next slide, please. We've talked today a lot about ambitions. So we've talked about ambitions at place, and we've talked about ambitions for population health. Our work with palliative and end-of-life care sits with some national ambitions. So there are national ambitions that are shown on this slide around, and I think what we try to do with all our work around palliative and end-of-life care is bring everything back to these 6 ambitions. Carmel will talk about the ambitions in a particular piece of work later on, but I don't think there'll be anything there in the ambitions that you can see that anybody would sort of disagree with there, really. So helpful to understand and know that there are national ambitions around that. And also, I think the reason why we've been asked to come today is obviously the dying well element of the integrated care strategy, and the ambitions there around dying well. So what we're here to do today is, I suppose, put a little bit of substance around those strategies. You can see from the next slide around how we bring all this together. I always think sort of the governance bit is the boring bit and the meeting structure, but I suppose in a setting like this, useful to see that there are various groups around the system, some of which are health focused, with our clinicians coming together to share best practice. We have an ICB strategic transformational strategic leaders group, which does involve partners, and you can see that some of these groups listed here are looking at reviewing representative from partners, but we do have a number of partners that sat around this table and involved in place as well, that sit on some of these groups. And I suppose what this is about is joining dots, joining agendas, and looking at how we shift from strategic obligations, national ambitions, through strategies to sort of doing the do really, and making this real in terms of a delivery plan for people and their families, residents and communities. So I'm going to hand over to Carmel. She's going to talk a little bit about a particular piece of work that has started at a strategic level that is now moving into place, and then that will sort of come full circle, I think, to inform what we do locally as places and as a Lancashire and South Cumbria partnership on a particular piece of work. So I'm going to hand over to Carmel now.
So currently my role is I actually work for the North West Coast Strategic Clinical Network as a palliative and end-of-life care programme manager, but as in that role, one day a week I support projects across Lancashire and South Cumbria. And the Getting to Outstanding, I was asked to have an overview and an oversight and just coordinate what was happening. Earlier this year we set off on that. But the background around the Getting to Outstanding, some of you around this table will know about it because I've been in contact with you around the place development. But for those of you who don't, just very quickly and high level. So a couple of years ago, the Lancashire and South Cumbria was successful in a bid for national funding, looking at around end-of-life care, and there was multiple projects happening across the country. But for Lancashire and South Cumbria, the bid went in around looking at the national ambitions that Angela has referred to. How can we take those national ambitions, make them into something that's usable for Lancashire and South Cumbria to allow us to then support maybe, going from good to getting to outstanding around the palliative and end-of-life care delivery for all people. I have to say at this point, when I'm talking around the getting to outstanding and the work that currently is happening, is mainly around adults at this moment in time. For a number of reasons, but with certainly the transition around from children and young people into adult is on our radar, and within some of this work that we're doing, there are questions around what are we doing around that transition phase. So it's just to be clear, in the main we're talking about adults around this. I've talked about getting from good to getting to outstanding, but I think we'll all know that the Health and Care Act in 2020 places a statutory responsibility on the ICB around that commissioning, around palliative and end-of-life care, and certainly the guidance that came out following that the Health and Care Act has been published, and in there talks around wherever is appropriate to develop and commission those services at ICB level. So that's what that slide was about. There are lots of other national documents that, again, somebody said we could be sat here for days. I think it was you, Claire, that, talking about guidance, but that isn't the purpose of this. So if you could just go on to the next slide, please. So I wasn't involved in the framework development. I was on another piece of work at the time. But the goal of the Getting to Outstanding framework that has now been agreed and that I'm now working with and supporting places to go through was around what do we across Lancashire and South Cumbria about defining what Getting to Outstanding would look like, and how can that inform both at place level but certainly at ICB level around that commissioning of services. And then the last thing there was around, so we've got the self-assessment tool. I'll just run through that just in a moment very quickly. So it was around recognising what is that Getting to Outstanding framework, how can it support the ICB around the commissioning and prioritising of services, but also to look at what can be done and what is in the gift of places to look at making better. But also, and I've certainly been working now with places since earlier this year, I think what I'm seeing now is the self-assessment tool. When you look at it, you think, oh, wow, that's fab. However, once in practical terms, you're going through a big group of people, some of it might feel a little bit cumbersome, chunky. And so really part of my role in all of this is to look at how can we make that user-friendly, because this isn't just going to be a one-off. we want to continue using this, so that's why we've put there around adapting and to support further reviews. What I would say is, so currently the work that we're doing with Place at the moment across Lancashire and South Cumbria, some places have been through and completed their self-assessment, and that's their baseline. Other places currently working with, and others we've got a plan. And we're hoping that by the end of this year, so the end of December, that all places will have gone through and at least have the baseline. To then look at, okay, so you've got your baseline, so what now can be the priorities for year one? And I think somebody else was talking about 5-year plans. So, yeah, probably do I need to move into that? Yeah, if we could just move on to the next slide. And I'll just, so this slide and the next slide, this is the front cover, if you will, of the document. Underneath you'll see there that we've got level descriptors. And, you know, we would be lovely to think that everybody was level 6 in everything, but we know that that's not happening. And so Place, that's for Place with a, I suppose, local intelligence to look at where do you think you are up to with this. And in some of the meetings that I've been in, usually some people might say, oh, I don't know, are we level 2 or level 3? And that's that discussion, and sometimes we've just got to go with the consensus of people around that table. So that was just to describe, the top bit is the front sheet of the Getting to Outstanding framework, and behind that is the 6 ambitions that link in with the national 6 ambitions, and then the level descriptors. So that's how it kind of works, really. If you can just go on to the next slide. Yeah, so if you look there, within the framework, it can be populated, and we do this as we're going through the meetings. Sometimes technology fails us and we have to go back to pen and paper and then go back and input it. But it will then populate as you're going through the different levels to kind of give some guidance. So if we're looking at the baseline position, to give Place some guidance around, oh gosh, we're in level 0 or 1 for quite a few of those. So that might then think we need to look at that in more detail, as opposed to some that you might be at level 5 or 6. But certainly the baseline position is where we want to get everybody to by the end of December, and then really for Place then to go back and look at that baseline assessment within their own strategy groups, whatever group you feel at Place is required, to look at what is your action plan then for year 1, 3 and 5, and taking into account that, you know, has been mentioned a few times. I think we know we've a lot of work to do, and it does feel overwhelming sometimes when we think about the amount of work that we have to do, but I think we're going to have some really difficult and challenging conversations around, but what is the priority? Because if you've got 50 priorities, I think somebody said before, we're going to achieve nothing. So that I think will be quite a challenge. With this, so my role in all of this is to have that overview. So if somebody said, well, where are we up to in Central Lancs, where are we up to in Blackburn with Darwin, I've got that high level view, and I'm supporting and saying, well, we've learnt from Blackpool how they did it, actually that works well. Marie Curie as a national organisation have also come on board in 2 respects really. One is that they work within our places, supporting people who are at the end of life, so that they do sit on some palliative end of life care strategy groups, locality groups, they're all different groups, isn't there now, it's different names. But also they are helping with the reporting of this. So what we're at the end of December, we'll have the Place, as I said, all completed. And then January to March, with Marie Curie leading on this, they will pull together a final Lancs and South Cumbria-wide report that will inform then, or should inform, from an ICB point of view, what is it that needs deciding, commissioning at ICB level, whilst Place can get on with the other stuff that they can be getting on with. And I think that's probably all I need to say, isn't it, Angela?
Thank you, yeah. Yeah, so I think that's an example there of a key piece of work that reflects, I think, some of the challenges that we've had in earlier discussions today around how do we learn across places, how does that shift up to a Lancashire and South Cumbria strategy, what needs to be owned at Place, and then that informing up and down the system, I think, and across partners. If we just move on to the next slide, we've just pulled out there, obviously, the strategy that's in there, that
the document, the ICP strategy document, and then just at in that third level of boxes along the bottom there, different pieces of work that are going on that absolutely link into that strategy. We're not going to go into all those in detail, and obviously you've heard that get into outstanding piece of work in a little bit more detail. But then moving on to the next slide, I think one of the key areas of work really is how we identify people in those last 12 months of life to avoid that crisis that we've talked about, and what informs our discussion. So a little bit like you were talking about earlier, what are the metrics that we sort of look at, and the tools that we can use. So we do have a tool that's providing a consistent approach across Lancashire and South Cumbria called the Early Tool. It's a tool that sits in primary care, that looks at a lot of the information, only as good as the information that's put in it. And obviously with our GP sit around the table, you'll know that, you know, if that information isn't in EMIS or isn't in the system, it's not going to pull out the right people. So we do need that sort of oversight of an MDT after we've got a list of people to make sure that, you know, Harry's not playing golf every week and he's on that list for dying in the next 12 months. We need to get that right. But it's about that early identification. It's about that surprise question. Would you be surprised if Harry was still alive in 12 months' time? And if the answer to that is no, I wouldn't be surprised, then what conversations have we had with Harry around, you know, in becoming less active, in becoming more dependent on other people, his decline in terms of his health? What are his wishes and wants in terms of, is he aware, or is family aware? What is that circle of support around Harry? Have people had, you know, advanced care planning conversations with him about his wishes and wants? Has that been recorded? Has that been shared? So we have something called EPACS that shares that information across the system. We can utilise a digital system that can have those wants and wishes. You know, if somebody's not going to be, wants to not be resuscitated, that information can be shared. Is that information shared with MWAS? Is it shared with the ambulance? You know, so somebody rings up, are they going to get transferred to hospital when they don't want to be transferred to hospital, which links to sort of Howard's conversation earlier on about, you know, where do people want to die? Do they want to go to hospital? Do they want to die in care home? Do they want to go to a hospice? What conversations of people being relevant people, and that might be volunteers, it might be Age UK, it might be friends and family, it might be practice nurse, it might be a respiratory nurse, it could well be a neighbour. And actually, how do we gather that information to be in the right place at the right time, to be able to support people to have that quality end of life care where they want it to have, where they want it to be. There's data that we can target and support. So Claire talked a little bit about priority ward work in Blackburn around that over 75 population. We've overlaid some of the palliative and end of life data onto that work and into that work, which talks about how many people have been identified using the early tool in that ward, how many people have got a care plan, has that information been shared onto EPACS, where is that place of death? Are people being transferred from care homes in that area to hospital when they might have that information but it's not been recorded? Or have we got an issue with training for that particular care home where they're not linking into their care home ward round, or they're not having conversations with the GP to say, you know, Nellie doesn't want to go to hospital, Nellie wants to die here, we need to involve their family and friends and carers. Are the care home staff, do they feel confident and competent around those conversations, and is that information being shared? And there's also the NACEL audit there, which is a in-hospital, acute-centred audit around improving quality of care in our acute settings as well. So if we can identify and we can have those conversations, there's a sort of so what conversation really. So I've talked a little bit about that. If we move on to the next slide, how do we share that information, and how do we get our workforce that are competent and confident in supporting and delivering that high quality end of life care? So there's loads of training out there. It's just making sure that people are aware of it and can access it. So there's a number of training opportunities there on that slide. I'm conscious of time, so I feel like I'm whizzing a bit, but want to sort of get to the end of it to have a conversation as well, really. There's also some work in progress, if we move on to the next slide, about a platform which is a public health approach to future care planning. And this is a platform that's available to anybody, really, called My Wishes. It's a piece of work that was developed by Central Lancs with all stakeholders, and there's potential to share this platform and localise it across Lancashire and South Cumbria to enable that information to link up through EPACs to our healthcare systems and be able to link up to avoid conveyance to hospital and those sort of DNA health CPR records. But this is a platform that is about, I suppose, prompting some of those conversations around, you know, if I got things in order, how do I share my digital legacy, all my passwords available so that friends and family can access my photographs or my media accounts or whatever. And that might feel a little bit odd now for our older population because they might not be as digitally enabled as potentially younger people are, or me, for example. But as we move on into our future, and we're talking about plans for 2050, aren't we? These sort of things, I think, will be more and more needed and necessary in terms of our palliative and end-of-life care. So just sort of worth mentioning that is a piece of work that's work in progress that hasn't yet been adopted across Lancashire and South Cumbria, but certainly if we're thinking about future plans, might be something that we need to look at in a little bit more detail. I suppose just moving on to last slide, and being mindful of time as well. So I suppose a bit for reflection, really. So what does this mean to you as an individual, as a, you know, Joe Public, in a sense? What does this mean to me? Have I thought about this? Do my friends and family know about what my wishes are? What does it mean to you in sort of work mode? What does it mean to your organisation? What does it mean to your staff and volunteers? What does it mean to our residents and communities? What does it mean for our place plans? What does it mean for sort of this board, really? So I suppose a little bit of a reflective piece of what you've heard, the significant piece of work that's going on at the moment to inform place plans and to inform Lancashire and South Cumbria plans, and then I suppose bringing it down to sort of individuals and communities, really. So thanks for listening. I hope that sort of prompted some thoughts around what you can do as you walk out the door today in your own sort of setting, but also I suppose what you were saying earlier around how this informs future training for workforce and that competency and confidence around all people feeling comfortable about talking about death and dying. So thanks for your time today. Hope that's been helpful.
Thank you, Angela and Carmel. Very helpful. Really good presentation that you've made there. It was interesting when I looked through the presentation in advance, but you brought it to life in speaking about it. And my background is I'm a qualified solicitor, and I've dealt with clients and talking about, you know, wills and the need to make wills and make plans for funerals. It's not always the easiest of conversation, but then people say, oh yeah, I hadn't actually considered that point, and I think something of that nature that you've just set out could be really helpful in getting people to consider other things. And you're right about technology and social media accounts. And there are lots of people that are 70s and 80s that are very active on social media and will have those accounts, and family may not be able to access them unless we think about those. So yeah, really good points. Damien, please.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, thanks. That's a really useful and really detailed presentation. So I think that's great. I'm obviously conscious of time now, so I'll try and be as quick as I can with this sort of two questions. The first one is just in respect of supporting bereavement, and it's really to just get your thoughts on what I'd call semi-expected death. So you talked about Harry, and do we know if think he's going to be alive in a year's time? Just to take my granddad, in the June of the year that he died, in June, if you'd asked that question, we'd have thought, ridiculous, he'll be alive. He died in the following January of a brain tumour, so no one was expecting that. Then we thought he was diagnosed late. He went into hospital in December, died in the January. It was all pretty horrific, frankly. So we, as a family, we were hurting, we were bereaved. Families in those situations are really hurting and may see failings in the whole structure. And it's really just to ask how we support people in those situations, because some of them may have been genuine failings, some of them may not have been failings. It may just be how you feel, like there's an injustice there. So there will be people out there who are feeling like that. So just to get your thoughts there on sort of expectations. The other question, and it might be more for Kevin, I'm not sure, it's just about the hospice position in this. And we talk about, I think, where is it about? Encourage all our residents to feel comfortable, talking about planning for dying, etc., and where they are. But obviously hospices play a huge role. The end of life isn't just what hospices do, but it's a key element of what they do. And obviously the core funding of hospices is quite minimal for something which is an essential service. We have East Lancs Hospice in Blackburn, and I think they have to raise about £4 million a year on top of the element that they get from the state. So, and there was a piece on the news or politics Northwest yesterday about Lee and Wigan Hospice, I think, and how they were worried about having to cut services. So how do hospices manage in this situation where there's that uncertainty for them? So that's kind of the question, really. What Kevin's view is, or the ICB view, about how we support hospices. Thanks.
Should I just come in on the first question about bereavement? So yeah, obviously we have got bereavement services across Lancashire and South Cumbria. It's interesting because people may or may not be aware that there's something called a medical examiner service, and that's just been specifically set up in the acutes up until now. We've been doing a big piece of work, certainly in Blackburn and East Lancs recently, working with the medical examiner service up at ELHT to extend that offer out to deaths in the community. Now that's all deaths, not just expected deaths, it's sudden deaths as well. And that's a contact with the family soon after the death to, so it's about certification of death and support in the certification of death that a GP would have to do, or hospital consultant in death in hospital. But that's a conversation with the next of kin around the certification of death, what to do next, what that family's understanding is about their care, do they have any questions, and that's being rolled out and will be a legal expectation from April next year. So the medical examiner service, I think, are going to be really key in, again, signposting to some of those services that we do have around the system, hospices being key partner in that, especially in our bereavement offer. But the medical examiner service will be key, and that's a national ask for death in community as well as death in hospital. And our certainly in East Lancs Hospital, it's ready to go, and is being tested out across a lot of our primary care practices at the moment. In terms of hospices, I don't know whether Craig will want to respond, but as well as Kevin, but yeah, absolutely key to our system.
Thanks, Andrew. Kevin, please.
Look, it's a challenging area. I mean, Howard's been involved in the discussions creatively working in this space. Like many of the organisations around the table, we've got challenging finances, but I think this is an important area. We've got far too many planned deaths in hospital, planned deaths. We do need to promote much more working with hospices and as well as lower hospitals there. So
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So we've set up a strategic hospice forum between the hospice representatives and the ICB. We've had a first positive meeting. We're looking at a range of options with regards to securing more longer-term hospice contracts. We're looking moving to an outcomes-based specification and how we can deploy the hospice resource differently. Also, some of our current funding streams potentially are fast-tracked from continuing healthcare, how we can utilise that differently to support the hospice, and thinking about some future bids for expansion. So whilst there is issues about funding in the short term, we want to look at a medium to longer term solution for a more sustainable offer from all the hospices. And I think it's been a really good co-designed, co-produced piece of work. It's at the early stages, and it might be something, Chair, that we want to bring back to a future integrated care partnership to show a real true partnership and collaboration between the hospices and the ICB.
Thank you for that. And Howard, please. Thank you, Howard. That's really helpful. Abdul.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, there was no mention in the presentation around culturally appropriate services. I think there's a lot of work, there's a lot of great work that actually happens really across our system in relation to this, our chaplaincy service, our faith organisations, the Lancashire Council of Mosques, the burial services that we actually have. There's a lot of work really, and just a couple of weeks ago we actually had the National Burial Council conference really at the EG group in Blackburn, where the Chief Coroner was actually here with us. DHSE national colleagues were there. I attended. It was a Saturday, a weekend event, but it'd be good to highlight, some of this great work when we bring it back, in terms of what those good practices are into achieving level 6, because clearly there's lots of great work already out there. But then obviously in terms of the medical examiner service, there is those pathway issues in terms of bedding down the new system. And clearly that's obviously been piloted in a number of areas for the last 6 months really, but to actually get to April 2024, really, in terms of how communities are actually affected by that system in terms of end-of-life care. And I've just experienced, an extended family death really of a brain cancer patient really who died at home really, and the consequences of that really in terms of that service, to actually get two clinicians, the medical examiner and the GP, to actually then in tandem and to get a funeral within the same or within 24 hours, according to actual funeral rites of a Muslim individual. That's complex. That is a complex system to navigate for the family as well as health and care services to actually get that right. So it'd be good to actually then bring some of that back. Thank you.
we've done some really good work, I think, over, there's certainly a way to go, but through COVID, with the Muslim Burial Council, certainly in Blackburn and East Lancs, around that support for timely burial. It's a challenge, and I think what we've got is local situation pushing that, you know, national policies and guidance, really, because it doesn't fit with what we need, you know, how we need it to fit. But certainly I think we're leading the way locally with prompting some of those conversations. So it was on my list, it was on my notes, and I've just not mentioned it. So thanks for that.
Signed. Thank you, Angela. Jeff, please.
Thank you again, Chair. Just something original to ask Angela and Carmel. You know, this is really important stuff, and a great presentation. It's really important because it's in our strategy, isn't it? It's important to people. You know, it saves money. It actually is the right thing to do. So everybody would agree with that. I've been through, as a GP commissioner, over decades now doing this sort of stuff. Introduction of gold standards, 6 steps programs, advanced care planning, do not resuscitate training, and it's all been good stuff. And yet, where I see in Cumbria, I don't think we're any better than we were 10, 15 years ago. In fact, I think we're worse because of COVID had a definite impact on our ability to deliver palliative care. So the problem is, you're going to have a great program, and you're going to try and make things better, but how do you sustain it? So you need to think about that, and I think you need to think about why it fails, and how do we evaluate your programs to have an effect on sustainability, because clearly all the programs we've done so far have not embedded sustainability. It's a big challenge, but I think that's the bit we need to do right.
Thank you. Tracy?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad the hospices issue came up, because I was going to mention it, and I probably would have been quite robust in the way that I talked about hospices, because Howard will correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, when hospices have to raise between 70 and 80% of their income, which I think is pretty much what they're doing at the moment through donations and income generation, really challenging environment to operate in. But what I did want to really focus on, in a similar way to the cultural side of this, is the work that happens across the voluntary sector when it comes to palliative care and end-of-life care. We cannot underestimate. And in a similar way to hospices, you know, we are in a position where we're under-resourced as a sector for this work, whether it's social prescribers out in the community. But from a kind of a patient perspective, and I'm using that word probably in the wrong way, because I am going to say and agree with Howard that we over-medicalise this terribly as a system. There's so many more ways in which inequalities come into play when it comes to end-of-life care. And again, I think we need to be really mindful and thinking about how we try across Lancashire and South Cumbria to, the way you talked about in terms of that achieving outstanding, we need to look at how we do that for all of our communities. And one of the issues that comes up often in the service I work in is the cost of death and the cost of illness, the cost of somebody having a terminal diagnosis. And I just haven't seen any of that within there. And again, that's where the voluntary sector really comes into its own in terms of how we work alongside our Macmillan welfare benefits advice people, how we help people understand what this means to them if they need to give up work, and all of the things that really support people when they may be at the very beginning of that journey of end of life. So some more of that kind of built into it to me. And also kind of going back to what we said, how do we as a system make sure that all of these things are resourced in an equitable way so that communities are not left out, and that it happens in each of our places, so that there isn't that disparity of, you know, almost a bit of a postcode lottery where if you're dying in one area, it's actually, you know, you've got all of this wraparound service, but in another area, often rural areas, you don't get any of that. And I think that is a really important part of any kind of strategy around end of life and palliative care.
Okay, colleagues, nobody else has indicated any further comments. Angela, Carmel? No. Okay, super. Thank you very much. Been a really good discussion on a very important issue. Thank you for that. Item 7 is any other business. Stephen.
I'm not prolong this, but I'm new, so you may have already done this work. The ONS says that Ribble Valley is the healthiest place in England. And we know that some of the districts within this area that we cover are some of the most unhealthy places. Do we know why? And have we done the work to check? Because one of the most important comments I think that I relate to is either your healthcare is passive or you take responsibility. And I think that was a really important comment before. Do we know if that's connected to that or not? Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Anybody wish to comment on that? Saxy.
That's one of the things why, even if we have the world-class healthcare in Ribble Valley or anywhere across the world, we will not be achieving the full potential of our health if we don't have basic needs met like food, housing, well, even more fundamentally about power and resources to control their own lives as individuals. And quite often there is an interplay with the market, the way things are advertised, the way things are, the choice architecture works in society. I'm not very sure about the ONS data on Ribble Valley, which I'm quite happy to pick up separately about what might be determining that. That's where we quite often find ourselves in. We've got fantastic access. I'll give you an example of drugs and alcohol services. Across the patch, reasonably good quality services. People can get access to it within a month or so. Rated very well in the country, but still our drug-related deaths are still high. So that's much more than just the drug alcohol services itself, but the conditions people find themselves in often lets people down. But it is probably a big single-item agenda for a couple of hours, Stephen. I'm more than happy to pick it up outside just to drill down on Ribble Valley and help understand, because we often assume Ribble Valley is the healthiest place, but actually when you look at the differentials within the district, it's the same as almost anywhere else. ONS also says there's no growth in the population, but we know houses are being built and people are coming in and struggling for school places, so I would take it with a pinch of salt.
Thanks for that. If you could take that offline then, and if there's a need to bring it back to a future meeting, we can do that. Thank you. Angela.
Mine was just about agenda planning for the next time in terms of ICP strategy and making sure the whole you said we did bit. I think we need to do it. And I know we've had a brilliant update around the palliative care and dying well, but we're not relating it all back to the strategy. So I think we did some brilliant engagement with the group here and with the wider population. And I think I, for one, would like to see some feedback on how we're doing. And I think our population would like to see some feedback on how we are doing. So if we could have a focus on that, that would be great.
Craig?
Yeah, that's planned in for January.
Oh, well then, there you go.
There you go, that's my vice chairman ahead of the game, well done.
Or not, actually.
No, I'm sure you are. I've also got some other suggestions for agenda items. So I've got one on social isolation and the impact this has on health and well-being, reports from places, Curer's Charter. Are there any other items that anybody wishes to raise now as potential future items, either at the January meeting or a subsequent one? Jane?
I think we said during this meeting that we'll bring the population health metrics back to the next meeting too for January.
Yeah, I was taking that as a given, yeah. Thank you. If there is anything else, please feed them in via Josh, because we want these meetings to be about the items which are of the most importance to ourselves as partners and ultimately to the community across Lancashire and South Cumbria. The date of the next meeting is the 22nd of January. Venue to be confirmed on that one. We will also be arranging an informal development session. We did say we'd hold 2 of these per year, So we'll be putting one of those in diaries as well. So Josh will no doubt be in contact regarding that. Okay, anything else, Jane?
So just a quick one, Chair. We will be reaching out to members to help us to develop that session. So if you do receive an email, I'd be grateful if you could step forward and help to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just once again say a big thank you to everybody who's helped to make today happen, that's put the reports together, that's made the presentations. It's been really well received. We've covered some very important topics, and I wish you all a safe journey back to your place of work or to home, as the case may be, and look forward to seeing you at subsequent meetings. Thank you.